Nightwing, issue 80, Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo on the art. Me and Matt said last week that Rorschach is the best book that DC are putting out. And I'm standing by that. I am standing by that. But discounting stuff like that, which is like the separate minis and prestige
the
books,
black labels.
yeah.
And...
If we're talking mainline, ongoing DC books, in walks Nightwing to take that crown. And
oh, I don't know about that.
And no,
I don't know if I'd give it the crown immediately.
No, I think I'm kind of there. Like I mean, obviously, I felt super attached to it after that first issue with the emotional Alfred stuff. Last issue was great, building up to the heart robbing scene. Also murder, but just heart robbing, I think, covers it. This issue, I think, did such a good job of, again, just solidifying everything I'm liking, not only about Nightwing, but just like the books in general right now, is the cohesive world that they're all sharing with each other. Because I know, like, Matt and you're about to do it on the show are going to fawn over a certain moment with Tim.
I did it on Twitter before Matt did.
Yeah.
Matt then tagged me in his one, going, "Yeah, see, I thought the same."
But this is the thing. I could jokingly sit and make fun of that moment or whatever just to wind you two up. But I honestly, I like the interaction with Tim in this issue. It feels the relationship that Dick and Tim should have. More than that, I mean, the Dick and Bab stuff in this book's been great so far. And, if the idea that Tom Taylor understands what we want from a Nightwing book, like, holy shit, is he nailing it? Because this issue, the police show up at Nightwing's door because, the homeless guy got murdered. Did he interacted with them because he paid for his hotel room, so that's how they've tracked him down. And Babs is on her way out. She's like down the end of the street, and he calls us, "Hey, I'm maybe being accused of murder. Can you come back and be my alibi?" Because it's not that she's making anything up. She is his alibi. She was there, which is a point again, which makes for some humor later when Tim's like, "So Babs spent the night, did she?" Like, I was on the couch, and then Babs is like, "I'm still here in the conversation. I'm Oracle. You realize what Oracle is, right? What I do." But the moment in the when she's talking to the police and they're sitting at the table. And she's like, "I was here all night," and the detective says, "What is the nature of your relationship?" The art of Dick sort of like just
puff of breath.
Yeah, the puff of breath, and like her saying that's not relevant, and just that moment, the pacing of that moment, and just how it plays into those two characters.
This whole sequence is gold because you got that puff of breath. Him going, "I've been wondering how to broach that myself, but." Probably not an interrogation. She's like, "That's not relevant." "Well, I think it's relevant." "Why?" "I have a law degree." And he goes, "Oh yeah, so do I." like he'd forgotten.
Yeah, super delightful. Obviously, they're going to look into who this is. Calls in Tim. Going to go to the kids' homeless camp that's set up the tent town.
Calls in Tim, and agrees that maybe he is the best Robin.
Maybe agrees. The exact phrasing is. Many think that he is the best Robin, and he says that he totally gets it. That does not necessarily mean that he thinks it's definitively true.
It's not. I will concede. But this whole Tim being a little shitbag, giving him the wallet on the chain, and yeah,
that was a good callback. That was a good callback.
You confront a soft metal band in the early 2000s, like Tim still got it.
So and the fact that they are traveling via being on top of a train and having to do the Matrix bullet dodge pose to not get hit by things in the tunnel is it's all just very delightful banter between them as they're explaining the case and talking about what's happening.
And he gets back and there's the dog. He's like, "Oh, you got a dog?" And Bab's like, "Oh yeah, just go to the pound." He's like, "Yeah, that sounds plausible."
So they go to the camp. Tim's undercover with the dog because he's younger. He's maybe closer to the age of all these kids that are here, the homeless kids, and actually, just I know because I'm seeing the part where they asked about Bab spending the night and him saying he slept on the couch. There's the panel where Bab says that she, I'm still on this channel, I'm still listening to this. The art there for that one little panel, the cartoony kind of
goes very chibi, doesn't it?
Yeah, I kind of appreciated that because it almost kind of felt like it's coming from the phone. Like it felt like not an emoji, but
No,
like an
you
avatar.
feel it like again to go back to
Yeah.
film language. That cut where it pops in with the extra person on the phone, you see it cut to them like, and it goes like almost
Yeah.
split screen, or there'll be like a little insert of them somewhere. It has that effect here.
Yeah. So the kid of the murdered man does talk about the fact that his father's heart was taken, but he's too scared to leave. He thinks he's safe here at the tent town. And then in walks a couple of C-listers, Executioner and is that just Brutal?
Tal?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of Executioner a bunch. Sorry, Electrocutioner. I'm sure there's Executioner as well. Sounds like a villain that's running around.
But there almost definitely is.
Yeah. But they came in basically because you guys are pickpocketing and this is blockbuster territory. Yeah, you give us a cut. Obviously Nightwing and Tim jump in. We get some fun action. I assume you enjoyed Dick putting his sticks together to make a staff and throwing it to Tim.
I did.
Yeah,
I did. I've missed seeing Tim with the staff.
So yes, very, very good stuff. I particularly like the page where Dick like grabs the staff or grabs Tim's hand rather and sort of like flings them past them. There's a good sense of motion between them, and them taking on these two.
The back and forth with them,
Yeah,
down like the 4 or 5 panels.
It's basically a tag team kind of special maneuver because it's 2-on-2. It's really good stuff. But there's a fire that breaks out. It's not these two that have done it.
But it is someone intentional because it's clearly arson.
Yeah, so Dick has to fly around, help some kids, save them, and the big tease at the end though is when he looks over and sees who started the fire. We all started the fire. I think you'll find. It was always burning. Something.
Since the world's been turning, I believe.
Since the world's been turning. Just Huey from the boys. Shout out to Huey. But yes, the Heartless, whoever this is standing, and it's a gorgeous page with the flames in front of him, and just like Dick's like hand in the foreground. So, really good stuff. I mean, I think, in some ways, this issue is probably the least like impressive from like a craft point. Not that there's not good like pages and panels and stuff in there, and like the way it tells the story, but in terms of we talked a lot in the first issue about the emotional stuff and about like how it's setting everything up. It's issue 2. There was a lot of praise about how they made us care about this new character just in time for him to die, and the fact that tied into Dick's efforts to help the neighborhood and all these things. So from a story craft, I think this might be the one that's the most straightforward because, okay, there's been a murder, we're going to investigate it. It's just storytelling 101. There's nothing particularly special. But what this does so well, and the book's been doing it well anyway, but between the Dick and Bab stuff and between the Dick and Tim stuff and the overall kind of aura of the Bat family are there to call upon each other when need be, and the fact that it feels like that, I love that between this and then another 1 or 2 books, I despite the fact that there's no Batgirl book right now, I don't feel like I'm missing Babs because there's a good presence of her in a solid capacity in multiple books where it doesn't feel like she's just been forgotten about, which is the problem. That was why for so long, especially in the New 52 era, when there wasn't a character or a book for a specific character, it basically meant that the character was almost nothing but maybe a background image in some books, and that was it. They felt so far removed. So I want to praise this because I think this was, along with Batman, which is doing a good job of it as well, with Batman with Oracle and Harley and the other things going on, where it feels like there is a shared universe between them in a way that doesn't feel like it's just a gimmick. It feels like, no, this is a family of characters who all know each other. The way they're interacting feels like it's actually acknowledging what we as the audience care about their interactions and care about their connections with each other, as opposed to just being. And some might argue that as some sort of level of fan service, but the funny thing is that I think fan service in comics is when they just throw them together, but the writer doesn't understand why we like them together. Whereas here, between the scene where they're talking about the relationship and the nature of the Bab Dick's relationship, between Dick's like thoughts about Tim being the best Robin, Taylor clearly understands why we like these characters together. Not just why we like them on their own, which we do, but why we like them together. And this felt like, yeah, like I don't know where Tim is in the grand scheme of things right now because Young Justice is done and there's not like there's a Tim book maybe coming at some
I guess
point.
he's Robin again now at the minute. And
Yeah.
we know there is a Robin Tim book coming by the person who did the Future State thing.
But even without that, this book just makes it feel like, yeah, he's out there being Robin. He exists. He feels like he's Robin from, mid to late 2000s again. Nightwing feels like he's Nightwing from the 2000s again. And not in the bad ways. They're still progressing. They're still letting the fact that Alfred's dead, they talk about it. It affects them. There's still progression, but it feels like, and I've had this conversation before where I've talked about how we don't, obviously we want comics to move forward, and one of the biggest problems with comics is that they don't move forward enough with a lot of characters. But when we say we want to go back to pre-New 52, it's not that we don't want things to progress, it's that things were erased and then there's no progression at all because we're just doing either the old things again or we're doing some new version of things again.
We want to go back to where we were and continue progressing from that.
Exactly. And it feels like... when Rebirth started, a lot of it was like, okay, it feels like we're kind of getting to a place where we're fixing the New 52, and maybe it'll take some time before it really feels that we're in that era again. And I think that's kind of why I'm digging DC Comics so much right now, is that a lot of it...
just feeling that way.
Sorry?
It's only just feeling that way now, isn't it?
It's only just now, and it's not that Rebirth didn't do the right things, it did, but it wasn't going to happen overnight where it felt like that again. And yeah, part of it might be Didio and some of the other staff higher up leaving was a big deal.
I agree with basically everything you just said on that whole big spiel, by the way. Although I do want to just nitpick some of the minutiae of the terminology, because I actually want to make a related point. I was going to use the word craft, but I was going to use the word craft in a very different way. Because you said you thought it was the weakest from a craft perspective. And I think in terms, and you're talking about writing craft and narrative, and I agree with that. In terms of the narrative, it's probably
let me just add to that. When I say weakest, I just mean
out of the three, it's still an extremely high bar.
It's still extremely good. Like, I'm saying that the strengths of this issue came from another lane, came from another perspective, I guess.
I absolutely agree, and I'm not trying to imply that you thought it was weak in any way. Just the weakest of the three, which I also agree with. But I think it's the craft of the comic itself that is the best in this issue, and that's what makes this issue still work so well, beyond just the character interactions. Things like, we talked about that sequence of Babs and Dick in the interrogation, the pacing of that's the craft of that art. I think just after that, we have the top-down, over-the-head layout of them in the apartment and kind of walking through the apartment. There's this top-down shot. It's just real nice stuff like that. We mentioned the pop-in little chibi art of Babs when she's like, "Hey, I heard that." When Dick puts his sticks together to make the staff, and it's it kind of has this little pop out, and it's again very reminiscent of something in, I don't know if it was the last issue of the first one, that reminded me of the Fraction Azure Hawkeye run. But things like that where it's like, no, this has got an identity on a craft perspective from the comic that makes it. I don't know if I'm willing to go on record and say the best thing that DC are publishing outside of Black Label stuff, but in contention for that crown, absolutely. It's in my top 2 or 3 without a doubt, and it's things like that that elevate it beyond even just the fantastic narrative and relationships as well. It's the pure functional craft of how it tells its story that it's just excelling at.
But let's also look at the idea that one of the things we've been saying about Batman is the world building and the idea of Gotham. This issue, I mean, the last 2 issues did it as well, but just the idea of 2 thugs coming from Blockbuster, again, makes it feel like there is a living city around this where there's other supporting cast. And one of the things, again, that was missing in 52 was the idea of supporting casts, both good and bad. So that's just another thing there, that it's like, yeah, the story right now is not about Blockbuster. Everything with Blockbuster and everything that's going on with that political stuff and the mayor and blah, 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 that's all seeding. That's all stuff that's going to come maybe in Arc 2, Arc 3, whatever it may be building to. But it's still there. It's still present. It still has an impact in some way on the ongoings of the story and the city and the world that's around Nightwing. And I think, that craft is exceptionally good throughout this. So, I mean...
Basically, what we're saying is this is an extremely well-made comic in pretty much every department.
Yes, yes. Yeah, all I'm really saying is that certain parts of the craft are shining more in this one versus other parts that were shining more in the last issue. This is really all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I guess with that said, what you rating Nightwing issue 8?
I'm gonna give it a 9.
I will also give it a 9. I think I will give it a 9 too.